We're live.
Good Saturday evening, Crimson and Blue Chips family. I'm your host, John Garcia Jr. Producer Kev is alongside, and look, we've got to be honest with you. We thought about doing a show today, but as the odds of Kyler Murray's victory in the Heisman Trophy race increased over the last week or two, we kind of thought, okay, well, maybe we won't go live because we're not sure if there will be things to bear in regards to Alabama football. We didn't want to come up here and just simply complain about Tua not getting the recognition that most felt he deserved. But lo and behold, it is December. It is closing season on the recruiting trail. And of course, Alabama went double flip miss today. Of course, they flipped Daxton Hill, the number one safety in these United States of America. And then, just for good measure, about half an hour ago, they go out and flip another prospect, four-star cornerback Jeffery Carter, two top 100 DBs. We've talked about the secondary for so long in this class, so many names, so few spots. Who would be the guys? Well, today Bama took a big step towards completing that secondary class again. Daxton Hill, Jeff Carter, two brand new Alabama verbal commitments. That number is getting closer to 25, the number one class, and that lead is just extending. And again, you flip these prospects. It's one thing to get a commit, it's another to get him to change his mind. And that's what Nick Saban and company have been able to do tangibly twice just on Saturday. So it ended up being a pretty busy and newsworthy Saturday evening. So we figured, hey, it's the weekend. People might be up. So let's jump on here live to chat it up. Kev, how we feeling this evening, man? Kind of an up and down, wild recruiting ride so far.
Yeah, I mean, me and you were talking, just having conversations, and then all of a sudden, phones start blowing up, and lo and behold, Daxton Hills flipped to Alabama from Michigan. Oh, sorry, and it wasn't really. I caught me off guard. I voted for the emoji with the head blowing off because
Oh yeah, you got to tell them about the poll first.
yeah. So we put up the poll. We said how what was it? How excited or how do you feel about Daxton Hill flipping? And it was the cool emoji, the surprise emoji, and then the emoji. And I definitely picked the emoji because I didn't see it coming. Haven't even heard any Bama talk since he committed to Michigan. I mean, I just kind of assumed it was a done deal. I wasn't, I don't think anybody really saw this. So it was a crazy day, and then of course that happens right before the Heisman stuff starts, and then obviously Kyler Murray wins the Heisman, which I wasn't really surprised about there either.
Should we see how devoted to recruiting these fans are? Because
If we start
I mean,
talking about Heisman, if they get mad.
well, no. I mean, we'll talk about the Heisman. Look, it warrants conversation. Is it best player or is it best stat sheet? We'll get into that and how
Yeah.
maybe there's some perception shifting in terms of how we cover football. But would you rather have a Heisman Trophy winner tonight or two potential starting defensive backs flip from schools that aren't necessarily rivals with A&M and Michigan, but schools that you want to defeat on the recruiting trail? If there are a fantasy draft of 5 coaches Alabama would love to defeat on the recruiting trail, you better believe Jimbo Fisher and Jim Harbaugh
He beat
are
two of
on
them
there.
tonight.
Right, and you beat 2 in one night in the secondary with guys who are pretty much the flag bearers of their class. Daxton Hill, I mean, number one safety in the country, top 10 player, absolutely the guy, the icing on that class for Michigan until tonight. And then Jeff Carter, an in-state kid, a Texas kid, as you try to rebuild that program, who you staved off pretty well from Alabama here until tonight. Those coaches would definitely be on the list. Kirby Smart would be on there, Gus Malzahn, and probably Harbaugh and Jimbo, and maybe Ed Orgeron to round out that starting 5 of fantasy draft of coaches that Nick Saban would like to defeat on the recruiting trail at this point. So to do 2 in one night, pretty big. So yeah, I want to ask some of the audience here as the live chat gets going. Would you rather Tua have won the Heisman tonight, or you get 2 blue chip commitments, including a top 10 player in America with Daxton Hill? So we'll let them answer there in the chat going forward. But yeah, what a Saturday night, up and down, left and right for Alabama, Kev. So yeah, as we talked about the Daxton Hill news, the most surprising out of everything. I think a lot of people expected Kyler Murray to use his lateward swing and trajectory to steal the Heisman from Tua. And I think a lot of people, in the recruiting world, expected a real battle between Alabama and A&M for Jeff Carter. And we've talked about it on this show, with the 4-star cornerback taking multiple visits to Alabama, or expected to take multiple visits to Alabama, November and December down the stretch. You felt like Bama had a pretty good shot to change his mind. So that somewhat expected, at least a coin flip at worst. But Daxton Hill, I mean, this is a guy who we thought was done. Picked Michigan, even though it seemed like Alabama led, and you really hadn't heard a peep with his recruitment. He was set to sign in 11 days for the early signing period with the Wolverines. They sent 3 coaches to see him this week, but a visit that he did host from Carl Scott really wasn't seemingly a big deal. It was Bama. We thought it was Bama doing their due diligence, as they often do, but I think this is just another example, Kev, of Bama staying in the race. Sometimes it's almost like you're going to finish second, but you got to keep fighting anyway. It works out sometimes. I mean, Dylan Moses has said it all the time. If Les Miles was at LSU, he'd be at LSU. But Bama stuck with it anyway, and they ended up getting a guy who was a Butkus finalist this year and probably the favorite going into next year to win the Butkus Award. You got to stay in the hunt. And I actually spoke to a source in Tuscaloosa on the coaching staff who said that's what we did. That's what we did with Daxton Hill. They stayed in the race. Bama was a narrow loser to Michigan, and usually I don't mean much. Like, oh, okay, you're first loser. Congratulations. If you ain't first, you're last, right?
Yeah.
But in recruiting, especially when a kid's committing in the summertime or early fall, where there's so much time in between pen meeting paper, you still got time to change their mind, and obviously that's what happened with Daxton Hill, and Alabama now has its highest rated secondary member in the class of 2019, and 2 top 10 players now with Daxton Hill and Antonio Alfano, 2 defensive prospects that highly rated for Alabama. And as we all know, this thing is pretty far from over, but I think it's fair to say, Kev, this is the official, signal, the gun popping off that the race to signing day December has begun. Alabama has kicked off the race to National Signing Day, the early signing period. Again, December 19th, Bama officially kicked that off with 2 monster flips on a Saturday night that everyone's focused on. Big recruiting weekends elsewhere. Georgia has the IMG trio on campus together, which we thought Bama would be the only school to do that. Florida is loading up with their biggest recruiting weekend under Dan Mullen. Kayvon Thibodeau, composite number 2, leading that group of visitors. And Alabama kind of waiting in the wings. A lot of commits coming back to visit. DJ Williams, a kid who doesn't even have an offer. It wasn't the sexiest weekend Thursday, Friday going into it, but as we see Nick Saban and company typically do, they know how to kickstart the news. Perception for Bama might be down a little bit. Tua's not going to win the Heisman. Well, let's go ahead and snag a couple of big-time commitments and completely shift the college football conversation back our way. That's what Bama does. They know how to control the news cycle, and they certainly did it tonight.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't think anybody saw either one. I know there's been more, there's been a little bit of Carter traction for Bama, but I mean, still, I don't think it was kind of a done deal that he would flip. I know there's been a little bit of traction, but still, I mean, I thought we were done. I thought I was done preparing the show. I was ready to talk about Daxton Hill, talk about Heisman, and then all of a sudden we get another flip, and here I am scratching off stuff, rewriting the show. So, thanks, Jeffrey Carter. Appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, it's huge. I mean, especially for a weekend with no game on campus, and I would imagine, I mean, not the, I mean, your big guns off campus in New York watching, excuse me, watching Tua at the Heisman ceremony. So the big gun's not there, but obviously the rest of the group isn't slack when it comes to pulling kids, and especially Lupoy and Brent Key and all of them who are pivotal in some of these recruitments.
Yeah, and I think you're seeing that. You're seeing the depth of the staff. I think a year ago this time we saw such a transition, right, with these Alabama coaches. Jeremy Pruitt gone, he's the head coach. Brian Dable, the other coordinator, gone. He's now an OC in the NFL, and then a bevy of assistants gone. What was the number 6 that Alabama had to replace? And everybody, when the new names started popping up, we talked about it on the show, Kev. We started noticing a theme. Hey, Saban is gunning for younger guys who are, frankly, more known as recruiters, a little bit more than position coaches, and we got to see a little bit more of the flex there, and the specific areas where this new coaching staff had more ties than the previous one were Mississippi, Texas, Arizona, Cali, kind of that corridor that begins west of the state of Alabama. And boom, tonight you get a kid, number 1 player in Oklahoma, maybe the best Oklahoma high school prospect in the last 20 years, certainly in the recruiting ranking era in Daxton Hill. You flip him from another blue blood in Michigan, and then you go into Texas, another one of these frontiers that it seems like Bama is better prepared to dig into, and you get Jeffery Carter again, flipping him from an in-state SEC school. I don't know how much I can put on that. Flipping an SEC kid from his in-state school to get him to go out of state in the same division is very hard to do. You just don't see it, especially at this point, especially with Texas kids, right? Late in the cycle. If anything, they usually flip back in-state. They're committed outside, and then towards the end of the cycle, they're going to stay home. We saw Alabama get victimized by Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M last year with a couple of prospects, Vernon Jackson and Bobby Brown, who had a great freshman year. I was going to say rookie year, freshman year in the SEC. He was a freshman all-conference performer. But that's usually how it goes. But here you got it reversed now with the in-state kid now leaving the state at the 11th hour, 11 days before Penn meeting paper. So that is not easy. It is not typical. It is not conventional, especially in Texas, especially with a blue chip recruit. And that is, again, another indication of what Nick Saban and here, especially Nick Saban and company can do. Carl Scott deserves a ton of credit for really the whole evening tonight. His secondary got a lot better, and he was the driving force with Daxton Hill. I actually just got a couple texts from my source in Ann Arbor who I lean on, and I said, look, was there any chatter? Was there any rumbling? He said minimal. He said this was the typical, fans just worrying because we're getting close to the signing period kind of thing. Kind of like Bama fans are worried about certain prospects right now. Every fan base is. Auburn's worried about holding on to George Pickens. Alabama fans are worried about just how strong this close can be. Will another top player in the state leave the state? So he said beyond the typical worry that fans get this time of year, nothing with Daxton Hill. And this source is as plugged in over there as anywhere in the country, as any source anywhere in the country. Not a peep from a tangible perspective. That's how improbable and really unforeseen this Daxton Hill flip from Michigan was. And again, these assistant coaches deserve a ton of credit. Carl Scott leading the charge there. Pete Golding as well. And these guys, some of these guys that are closing well on the trail, they're candidates for other jobs. So I think that's giving you some answers as to where their priorities lie. And again, showing part of the reason why Nick went out and hired these guys who were largely unknown and not, dramatic hires. The big hires that were talked about for this year, it was more the Dan Enos, Josh Gaddis crew. And those guys have recruited well in their own right. But now the guys who were kind of second tier to them, perceptionally, Carl Scott, Pete Golding here flexing a little bit. And if Bama gets Nakobe Dean, that is the equivalent Carl Scott and Dax Hill with how he has been with Nakobe Dean. He is the driving force there. So improbable, but you're also starting to see the big picture come together. This is what the plan was. Nick didn't want to get poached like he had been. So he went younger. He went with guys more known for recruiting in somewhat unconventional territory for Alabama. And Saturday, December 8th, a big payoff in that regard with Daxton Hill and Jeff Carter. So salute to those guys doing work. And at a minimum, the Bama brand, Kev, always pretty strong, especially in the secondary. You kind of expect it at this point.
Yeah, I mean, turning into kind of a DBU type situation where you've got all these great NFL guys that you can sell your program on. Like, look at the guys we've got in the NFL right now, and they're all performing at very high levels. I mean, you got Eddie Jackson, who's turned into a touchdown machine. Minka Fitzpatrick, who's playing at a real high level. Ronnie Harrison just got his first pick the other day. So, I mean, you got a lot to sell. For
probably having a first rounder this year too.
Yeah. So, I mean, you got plenty to sell with your program when it comes to DBs. So, yeah, it's looking up for him right now at the DB position. That's for sure. You're gonna lose it. You're gonna lose a couple. But if this DB class solidifies with what it is right now, you got a couple coming in that can fill spots.
Yeah, and as Ricky the Great says in the comments, don't forget about the older guys. I mean, we're so used to newer guys from this Saban regime in the league with the Landon Collins, Eddie Jacksons of the world, Minka Fitzpatrick, Marlon Humphrey, etc. What about the older guard is still making plays? Kareem Jackson has had a great year for the Texans and that defense. Even Drake Kirkpatrick at times has flashed in the league. So it's the whole DBU conversation, I think, is still up for debate. I think LSU originated it. Florida State tried to jump in there, and they're still in the conversation now. Florida promotes it and parades it more than anyone, although they might have the least stake in that. And now Bama, I think, really, in terms of numbers, is the leading school. So that conversation, I think, is one that's far from over. But Bama's definitely in it at this point. And look, that's what kids are saying. They talk about the league when they talk about Bama. The Natties are great. The rings are great. The winning is great. The exposure is great. But they talk about that next level. And we've talked about it here on the pod. We used to talk about kids winning, and that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to win, and they wanted to play and be on CBS and ESPN and all these things. Well, the league has surpassed that. That is what we're hearing as the number one motivator for picking a school nowadays. So Alabama's doing it on the field Saturdays, and they're definitely getting kids over on Sundays.
Absolutely, because I mean, you got these guys, these kind of younger coaching staff that they gotten in there, and we're seeing a lot more these guys active on social media, and we all know the kids these days love their social media, and
right, and that's part of the perk of going younger.
Yeah, exactly. So now you got these young guys in there that are killing social media. I don't think I've ever seen Bama coaches as prevalent as they are on social media right now. They are all over social media, whether it's cool edits or whatever they're doing. They're killing social media. They're killing this Built by Bama thing. I think that it goes a long way in recruiting when you can have so many guys you can show, hey, look, we've built this, and you got guys performing at such high levels in the NFL, and that's what these kids want, especially the ones that are the top tier kids. They talk about, I want to go to the league. I know what I want. I'm coming to Bama because I want to play on Sundays. So.
Don't you love the kids that say, I'm going to spend the next 3 years at school X?
Yeah, exactly. I love that.
I love that.
I'm calling my shot. I'm calling my 3 and done shot. I respect it, man. It's just like the one and dones in basketball. I respect it. I mean, if
Do
you
they do that
know,
in basketball? Do they say I'm spending next year at Duke?
I mean, you got to kind of think that.
That's funny if they do that.
Yeah, I mean, you got to kind of think that.
I mean, if Zion Williamson, I mean, I'm sure he did that.
Oh yeah, I
RJ
mean,
Barrett, those guys.
I'm sure he'll be one and done.
I'm spending the next 8 months at Duke. Hashtag Go Blue Devils.
Yeah, exactly. And for those guys, it's crazy because now they only got to go to class for one semester.
Yep. Carmelo Anthony playing, baby.
That Carmelo Anthony playing, son. He didn't go to class at Syracuse that second semester. So but yeah, well, we regress, but I mean, with these guys getting on social media and promoting the heck out of their program on social media, it just I think it just helps. It helps recruiting, and we're seeing that now with the classes that they're pulling in right now. And just it's scary.
Yeah, Bama's number one class it was already number one, and now you get 2 top 100 guys, including a 5-star, and now it's booming. It boomed past the 300-point mark, which is a real benchmark in recruiting coverage, and obviously, still spots remaining, still several 5-stars out there for Alabama to potentially grab. So this finish is going to be as 5-star and as exciting as really any that we've seen under Nick Saban, because of the possibilities. Bama's not going to get all the 5-stars out there, we don't think, but the odds are pretty high that there are going to be several more jumping in.
I keep saying it. I said, God, Alabama can't get all these kids.
Yeah, you texted me that today.
I know. I texted you. I said, damn, Alabama can't get all these kids, but they keep racking up. So I feel like we're gonna see I feel like here soon we gotta see either a decommitment or a gray shirt or something coming.
Oh, it's coming. It's coming.
Because I have feelings like I have my feelings on who it will be, but there's got to be something because the spots are filling up and there's just not a lot of room left. And there's a lot.
And you're still trying to add 2 offensive linemen, a running back, potentially another DB, still another linebacker, at least one more linebacker, and there's still 2-3 defensive linemen you could jump in on.
So these 2 now make what, 24 for the class?
24 commits right now. The original number that we
27
ish.
Oh, so 3 spots to fill
4
positions.
They're going to add more than 3 guys, though.
Somebody's getting gray shirted.
There's going to be some wiggle room from Nick and company. Manipulative tactics that he really invented on the trail. It's coming.
You're gonna see a Jerez Parks type gray shirt. There's gonna be some 4-stars, either gray shirt or just go somewhere else because there's just not gonna be room.
Brian, there's nothing wrong with that. Look, and Bama's been very diplomatic about it. Usually, they haven't pulled the gray shirt the morning of signing day or the day before signing day like they had in years past. They haven't done that in a couple of cycles. Parks' gray shirt was a bit of a miscommunication. Other than that, I think you have to go back to Riley Cole for a notable day before signing day. Hey, we're gonna gray shirt you, homie.
My man Riley Cole.
Riley Cole, shout out to South Alabama. I don't know if he's still there, but that's where he ended up. That scenario is different nowadays. I think you will see a little bit more heads up given by Alabama in this class, and there could be momentum. I mean, momentum that way, I should say. And I think there's a DB in South Alabama who could be under consideration. I think there's an offensive lineman from Kentucky who could be under consideration. There could be movement from a running back in Washington, D.C., a quarterback in state, maybe with some manipulative tactics there. We're not so sure. So there's going to be some movement, some change, some shifting. But for the Alabama fans out there, it's all going to be positive for the most part. If you lose a guy, whether it is staff induced or because another school beats out Bama, that guy is going to be replaced by a guy as good or better.
As I said,
basically guaranteed. I mean, who is the worst prospect Bama's still in on, Kev? Like, who's the worst one?
The worst one that's still in on?
Who is the worst, lowest rated prospect that they're still in on? It's probably like a guy who's like top 150 in America.
Yeah, overall. I mean, you're talking 4-star 150. I mean,
right.
I mean,
I mean, there's really not that many non-5 stars at this point that they're in on. You're talking
Yeah, I mean, we're talking
Henry
about
To'oTo'o, George Pickens, maybe guys like Jordan
Softshore.
Battle, Ishmael Sopsher. Well, Ishmael Sopsher is a 4 or 5 depending where you look. So those are the lowest rated guys, and those are guys that we rave about. That's where you're at
Absolutely.
right now, Bama fans.
So yeah,
So
you're talking about replacing somebody low on the commitment list with someone at least in the top 150. So
right,
like we're not
it's
talking about like, oh, we're gonna just replace him with somebody the same. Nah, like we're talking upgrades and
right.
position. So
Yeah, the next 11 days will not be boring. So we'll see. And we'll see. And the weekend, look, this is the crazy part. Bama's got like 10 official visitors on campus this weekend. Clay Webb's committing Monday. A lot of people still don't know. I still don't know, so don't ask. I'll be there though. I'm in Birmingham now. This is not my office behind me. I will be there Monday morning, 10 o'clock Central Time for that. The IMG guys are popping on the 19th. Kayvon Thibodeau, 1 week from today, has his commitment party. We'll find out where he's headed. It's
did
going to get crazy fun here down the stretch.
you
If
see
you're a
my
college
you
football,
see my one I sent you, the Evan Neal poster for his commitment party? Like my man's got like full blown posters for his commitment party.
yeah, that's what it's become. And he's a quiet to himself guy, and he's doing that. So it's it's going to be live on ESPN. It's going to be a whole deal, and Bama's going to be heavily involved with those guys. But you got to survive the weekend and one more recruiting weekend next weekend before the dead period hits. I believe on that Monday before the 19th, which is of course a Wednesday, and then we'll find out for sure, Kev. But do we want to jump in on these latest commits and take a bit of a closer look?
Yeah, definitely. I got it queued up. Let's get into it and
Yeah, let's
show
see,
the
guys. We're gonna
people
do a
show the
little live
people
eval.
show the people what Bama's getting. So let me
I'll tell you what, I haven't watched Daxton Hill in like 6 months.
I haven't watched him in a while, so it'll be good for me too. Let's get this you want to do Car we'll do Daxton Hill first.
Either way,
They just released a new one. He won obviously, as you see, 2019 Gatorade State Player of the Year. Oh, that's
the
only
last Gatorade Player of the Year from Oklahoma, Bama got was
don't know.
Josh Jacobs.
Oh, there we go. All right, so that one was only 35 seconds long. We're not watching that.
Yeah, humble beast. I saw one where it said Money Badger instead of Honey Badger. I like that.
I like that. Sorry, guys. I had one queued up, but I didn't realize it was only 35
What a
seconds.
rookie are we?
Yeah, my bad. So now,
Well, guys, if you'd like to buy whatever the hell this is,
I think this is telling you to not vape because vaping's bad. What is happening? Okay, there we go. Sorry, guys. Please bear
Jackson
with
Hill's
us.
very good. Look at those verified numbers. 6'2", 182, 4.46 laser 40-yard dash, nearly a 40-inch vertical, 4.13 on the shuttle. Very quick, guys. At my peak, and I have the school record for the shuttle time at my university, I was 4.0 on my best. So this kid's a little bigger than I was back then, and you can see the range there. I mean, this is a classic number 1 5-star safety. So you should expect all of the top safety traits out there, whether it is ball skills, instincts, range, athleticism, and obviously when he catches the football against Oklahomans, he's going to make plays with the ball there. Kev, what do you see so far? What do you remember of Dax Hill?
I mean, just that, like the closing speed he's shown right here. And here he goes on offense. So I mean, the kid's an athlete. The ball tracking ability, like that, tracking that ball over his shoulder like that is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and you see the size too, and I think that's
Yeah.
that's what pops, and it's legit. It's legit 6'2" plus. Seen the kid with my own eyes multiple times. It's one of those frames and skill sets where it translates all the time. Every time he's on the field, you can see where he has an advantage over the guys he's going against. And again, the pure
The
athleticism to
speed.
it's like every time he touches the ball, he's taking it back. Yeah, I mean 6'2", nearly 200 pounds with 4.4 speed is just rare at any position.
So that means
Those guys are
they've
say what?
added a 4-4 a verified 4.4 and a verified 4.3 because Jeff Carter is verified 4.36.
Right, and you're talking about just ideal times and vitals for defensive back prospects. And Carter is not a small guy. You know, these are Nick Saban DBs, 6 foot plus, in the 4.4 range, with basically a little bit of everything to offer.
People are saying they can't see it. Hold on.
Did you hit the share screen there?
I thought I did. Let's try this one more time. My apologies, everybody.
So they're just looking at my face like, oh, what is this guy talking about?
You would think I've done this before, which I have, but all right. Do we have video now? Do you see huddle? Can I get a verification, please? Huddle, maybe? Anybody? Again, speed.
Don't see it, Kev.
You don't see it either?
No, I see it on our feed, but I don't see it on the YouTube feed.
No. Okay.
Stand by. Play the little technical difficulties music.
Present to everyone. Your screen sharing is not presented to everyone. There we go. Maybe now?
The jury is still out. Nope.
Well,
fortunately, no.
I mean, this isn't my first rodeo with this, guys. I promise. I do the eval videos. This is exactly how I do it.
Yeah, not sure what's going on there.
Well, sorry, guys.
Yeah,
but
maybe we could reboot it and see if Jeff Carter's will work.
Yeah, so we'll just talk for a minute, and I'll work behind the scenes real quick and see if.
Yeah, I know. Some folks were asking him for a player comp for Daxton Hill. I just don't know if Bama signed a kid like this. I think a lot of people size-wise will go towards Clinton Dix, another guy who was legitimately 6'2 plus with great athleticism and explosion. But I don't think was as fluid as Dax. I think Dax has some corner ability if you need it. That's something we never saw or said about coming out. And he was from Florida. You know how I am with Florida guys. We didn't say that about and I think that's the difference between him and Dax. He has Minkah Fitzpatrick-like qualities at a larger size. I'm not going to say he's Minkah because the whole combination of size, speed, fluidity, mentality, all of those things, instincts are just different with a kid like that, but not so different. With Daxton Hill. I think the difference is that Minkah, I thought, could have been an NFL corner if he wanted to be. I think Dax is going to be a safety no matter what, but he can occasionally come down here. So I don't think there's a Bama player comp. It would be more of a Clinton Dix size-wise, but a little bit more of a Minkah Fitzpatrick skill set. I actually think skill set-wise, this is a bit more of a Derwin James, who's a rookie right now with the San Diego Chargers. Just a guy who could probably do everything. You can line him up at defensive end if you need a spell there, if you need to add some pressure. You need a corner for a play. You need a safety for a play. You need a guy to run with a tight end, a guy who's physical enough to be able to combat a tight end. I think that's where Daxton Hill comes in. So he's a little bit more Derwin James than Clinton Dix to me, in that he is truly versatile. He can do a little bit of everything. He could play some offense as well, as you saw, although he won't at the next level. But he's a special athlete. I mean, if you're – just think of this, right? You're a top 10 kid in America, and you're from Oklahoma. Think about how good Josh Jacobs is, and he was a 3-star. Daxton Hill is a top 10 player in America from the same city. So, yes, we've come a long way, and we're trying not to miss on guys like that. Sure. Could that be part of the conversation? Absolutely. But top 10 player in America in this class? Think of the top 10 players in America, okay, just for a second. Even just from the Bama side of it, guys who you're familiar with as Bama fans, Trey Sanders, Nolan Smith, Kayvon Thibodeau, right? Tony Alfano, Ishmael Sopsher. These are legitimate prospects. Nakobe Dean, Clay Webb. These are the best prospects in the class. He is in that group, and he's from Tulsa. So just consider that for a second in terms of how good this kid may be, that he is so highly regarded despite all of those things that has typically bogged kids down. Has there ever been a 5-star from Oklahoma? I haven't looked it up, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there has been. That's the type of kid he is. Again, I think a little bit more Derwin James than HaHa Clinton Dix, but heck, those are both first-round draft picks. Those were both 3-and-done safeties at major institutions, and I think both of them won a national title. I know HaHa did. I don't know if Derwin James overlapped with Jameis for that 2013 FSU season. But either way, my point is that it worked out well for both of them. So wherever the player comp shifts between these two, it's a good thing for Alabama with Daxton Hill. And the third guy we talked about, Minkah Fitzpatrick, again, another national champion, another first-round pick. So that's where we're at there with the player comparison for one Daxton Hill. And I think it just creates a different dynamic in this class. And it makes you wonder about the rest of the secondary. Where is Noah Pola Gates now? Where is Jordan Battle now? Where is Marcus Banks now? Akeem Dent. Are 2, 3, maybe even all of those guys done? Are they out of the conversation? I don't believe all of them are. At this point, I would still be very surprised if Jordan Battle called up Nick and tried to jump on board and Nick said thanks but no thanks. I don't think that happens with Battle. He's still the guy that I think you take no matter what. But some of those guys that I just mentioned are probably out now for Alabama. And again, we talked about it with Kev. Some of the lowest rated guys Bama's in on, these are all top 150, top 200 type guys. All 4 stars or better. All elite prospects who can do a lot of things in the secondary. And Bama's doesn't have room for those guys. So somebody else is going to luck into one of these or 2 of these or 3 of these and say, well, down the stretch, we beat Alabama for them. And it won't entirely be true. But and let them enjoy that with their signing day banners and all their fans and things like that. But that's how good this secondary class is becoming. And that's how good individually that Daxton Hill is. And again, you give credit to Carl Scott for kind of staying the course here. And I think when you look at the composition of the secondary class, Bama hit 2 major needs in different directions there. I think you needed a pure safety, a guy who you can line up like a Deontay Thompson, like a HaHa Clinton Dix in the back end and let him patrol. And that's what you got with Daxton Hill. And then you needed a pure corner. That's something that we question whether or not the pure corner was in this class. Christian Williams is verbally committed as we speak, but as we've gone on and as we've seen him in person, as much or more than anybody in this industry, what have we said? We think he's a bit more of a combo guy. We think he's a bit more of a Shaheem Carter. Nothing wrong with that. You need it. Shaheem's had a great year, glue guy of the year on that Alabama defense, but there's a difference between his skill set and that of a pure corner. And that is what Alabama took Christian Williams as, a pure corner. So I think that is where some of the perception shifts a little bit with this group, and that's why the importance of Jeff Carter is sky high, because he has a little bit more fluidity, a little bit more of the pure corner traits that you look for comparatively to Christian Williams. So in theory, you've got a nice secondary brewing here if you're Alabama, because you got a combo guy in Williams, a pure corner in Jeff Carter, a true ball hawking pure safety in Daxton Hill, and then another guy who might be able to move around in Brandon Turnage, who's the forgotten one, if you will, with the secondary group. I'll tell you what, I just did his scouting report for 24/7 Sports, and I really dug into that tape. You like that kid a lot more every time you watch him. He's another 6'1", 185-pounder who is extremely fluid athlete, another one who plays wide receiver. And I think he could be the balanced safety to counter to a Daxton Hill who might be a little bit more suited to play at the line of scrimmage at times, inside against a receiver or a tight end at times. He could, and Turnage can counter that and be more of the freed up one. And actually, that's why I compare him to Deontay Thompson. He's the guy who reminds me of Deontay. So think of the 2 safeties that Alabama has now, Deontay Thompson, Xavier McKinney. Think of Hill in the McKinney role and Turnage potentially in that Deontay Thompson role. I think he's a little bit more rangy, a little bit more quick twitch than Daxton, but Daxton is bigger, faster, and straight line, just more wowing. He is a straight line demon on the football field. And again, that's why I think there's a little bit more of a Derwin James in his game compared to some of these other guys. So this secondary is now really coming together for Alabama, and that's regardless of if one of these guys departs the class. So now you got 4 DBs committed. You're still in on Battle. You're still in on Pola Gates. You're still in on Banks. You're still in on these other prospects. So now Keem Dent's a 5-star that Bama may not have room for. Not saying that's the case, but it's possible at this point that Bama may not have room for a 5-star corner. When have you ever heard that? And that's where Bama is at this point, and that's how big Jeff Carter is for this class of 2019. You got your pure corner now, so you can offset with combo guys, with guys who can do a little bit more in the secondary than lock into one spot. So important night for Alabama, and at a minimum, once again, you flip them from 2 of the 5 schools and coaches that you really are competing against on a national scale with Jim Harbaugh and Jimbo Fisher, who's in your conference, in your division, obviously. So big deal for Alabama this evening, despite the unfortunate scenario for most Bama fans of Tua Tagovailoa not winning the Heisman Trophy. I do want to touch on that for a second, because I do see that has kind of popped off in the chat. Yeah, Ricky the Great says, "What about DeMarco Hellams?" Completely forgot about him. So sorry, really forgot about. I don't think he. Yeah, I mean, he played mostly wide receiver this year. I think he's an athlete. I think he's positionless at this point. He doesn't have a lot of the safety traits that these other guys have. So, but if you are constructing a secondary with the current commitments, I think you'd put Christian Williams at one corner, you would put Jeff Carter at the other corner, and then you would let the 3 safety types battle it out between Hellams, Dax Hill, and Brandon Turnage. But I would put Dax and Turnage over Hellams. He hasn't shown as much on tape. That's not all his fault. He plays at a loaded high school at DeMatha Catholic, and they ask him to do a couple of different things. So we just hadn't seen that same type of range on tape. I think his junior season maybe a little better than his senior season, so I left a little bit to be desired. Not saying he's going to be pushed out. Look, it's another top 100 guy in the class, but I have this receiver thing in my mind with DeMarco Hellams, and maybe he ends up there. I mean, Bama's only got one receiver committed in John Mechie, and at this point, it looks like that's it at the receiver position. So perhaps a guy like that can slide over and play some wide receiver like the last DMV athlete that Bama brought in Trevon Diggs, who did a little bit of both his first year or two on campus. Didn't mean to forget him. Thanks y'all for checking me on that. That's when you get 24 commits and it comes all in a hurry, you kind of forget about the guys who had been on board a little bit earlier there. But the secondary class, 5 guys right now. It probably won't be these final 5 or these 5 when all is said and done. But at this point, 5 pretty good DBs. Your lowest rated one, I think, is top 200 in the country. So Bama loading up in the secondary, a surprise to nobody. Where we at, Kev?
Yeah, it's not too shabby when you're forgetting about a 4-star kid. No, I mean, obviously there was a lot of chat earlier about the Heisman situation, and I feel like we could touch on that briefly.
Well, the floor is yours.
Before we move into whatever else we're going to talk about tonight, since my whole plan got thrown monkey wrenches with the two guys flipping. No, I mean, when we talked about it early on in the year, after the Louisville game, we talked about it, and we said, is the only shot that anyone else would have is Tua's not going to play the minutes and he's not going to have the stats to win the Heisman. And that's the world that we're living in right now, college football, where everything's turning into a stat game, and everything's turning into, the percentages and stats. And I mean, there's all these different stat people that are grading and all this stuff just ridiculous things like things that you would never oh, I want to see how many completions Tua has on third down. Like, why are we? I mean, what's going on here? So I mean, it's just turned into a stat game, and I think that's the reason why Tua lost the Heisman. He had 200. He had 200 less snaps, and the 200 less snaps.
200.
Yeah, the
If you want to
200
make
less
it a number
snaps. We're
game,
talking. Okay,
focus
so
on that number.
here's where we're gonna go with this thing.
200.
On average, an average offense runs 60 to 75 snaps a game. If you're an up-paced offense, you're going to run upwards of 80 a game. So we'll just go with the regular paced offense, 75 snaps a game. You're talking like 2 full games worth of
almost 3
snaps that he hasn't taken against the other 2 guys. So, and that's, they're blowout wins. He shouldn't play. But that's just the nature of the beast that happened this year. No offense, and I'm not trying to take anything away from Kyler Murray or Dwayne Haskins, because if you put Dwayne Haskins, Kyler Murray, or Tua in any of the last couple of Heisman races, any of them could have won probably the last 2 or 3 Heismans with the stats that they had this year. Haskins had some ridiculous stats along with Murray and Tua, but that 200 snaps is what caused him to not win it. And we said it after Louisville. We said he's not. I don't think he's going to have the resume to win it. And as we got closer and closer, I just, for some reason, as much as I wanted him to win for the story and everything like that, I just felt like Kyler was going to win. And that's what happened tonight. We saw Kyler win it. And I'm not trying to say Kyler wasn't worthy, because obviously Kyler Murray was worthy with the season he had. But, it kind of turned into a stat sheet instead of best player to me, in my opinion.
Yeah, real quick. Speaking of this being a great night, 2020 Alabama football commitment Carson Beck, I just saw, just won a state championship in the state of Florida. So Talia Tagovailoa lost it, and it was kind of a rough week for the Tagovailoas. Injuries for both quarterbacks, lost state championship and lost Heisman Trophy, but they got to go to New York for free, so that was cool. And then the other quarterback committed in 2020, Carson Beck, wins the state title, and he's a guy we're about to start talking a lot about. I've actually heard a lot of really good things about him. But back to Tua and the numbers thing, I think this is the culture. I think this is where it's going. We have all of these metrics to look into things, all of these analytics, and it's becoming, it's not, football's not baseball. Baseball is very, very clear. You are what your numbers say you are, because the game is a tangible one. It's a little bit less strategy. It's a lot of it less strategy than football. So everything's pretty much a level playing field, other than like elevation and some extenuating circumstances. But for the most part, baseball numbers are what they are. If you hit 300, you're considered a good hitter. If you hit 30 home runs, you're considered a power hitter, etc. If you steal, 25 bases, you're considered a speedy guy, what have you. But now we have all these advanced metrics in baseball, wins above replacement, and all these defensive runs saved, and all this stuff. But baseball's always been that numbers game. It's innings and strikeouts, etc. It's such a long and large sample size that the numbers really do dictate an average of what you are, because there's so many examples. Football's not like that, because there are less. We get 12 games in college football, 16 in the NFL, 13 in college if you make it to your conference's championship game. That's it. And every game is so different. Every conference so different. The flow of each game so very different. In baseball, if you're a dominant pitcher, you can pitch 9 innings even if your team is up 10-0, because you're efficient and you can get out of it, etc. In football, if you're up 45-0 at the half, you're not going to keep playing, even if you're feeling good and you're not tired, etc. You're just not going to keep playing. It's a different game. And Oklahoma, because of a poor defense and because of a poor conference, was in a lot of games, multiple overtime games. Army took them to overtime. Go Army, beat Navy, big win today. Army took them to overtime. Would Army have taken Alabama to overtime? I don't think so. Oklahoma didn't score in the second half of that Army game. So they were in dogfights all the way through. Texas both times, West Virginia. They were in many more dogfights than Alabama, who was in one dogfight, and it happened to be without Tua, who obviously was injured in that SEC title game. So I just hate how numbers are dictating so much of this. If you want it to be a statistical award, say it. Make the Heisman that, and that way. A lot of people will shut up. A lot of people like me will shut up. But if it's about the best player and the guy who you said at more points this season, holy crap, look what these guys are doing, Tua should have won the Heisman. If it's about pure numbers, Dwayne Haskins could have been a bit of a better argument, certainly than Tua. And they would have been more comparable to Kyler Murray. So I think it needs to be more defined. It's just like the MVPs in professional sports. Are we doing best player on best team? Or are we doing guy who puts up the most ridiculous numbers? I mean, we need to define what that is, because if that's the case, LeBron should win the MVP every single year in basketball, right? Or are we doing MVP, the best player on the best team? No, that's what we do in basketball. That's why Steph Curry's won it. It's why James Harden won it last year. Russell Westbrook the year prior. Kevin Durant. All these other guys get a shot, because if we're doing best player purely, most important, it's LeBron every year, and the numbers as well.
Yeah.
So I just think we need to define the Heisman a little bit more. I was having the conversation earlier. Christian McCaffrey should have won it over Derrick Henry. Sorry, Bama fans. It's unanimous. I mean, look at the numbers. Look at the importance, the MVP-like nature. Bama without Derrick Henry, still pretty good, probably still a natty type of team. Stanford without Christian McCaffrey that year, different conversation. And anybody who breaks Barry Sanders' record should probably win the Heisman Trophy. So are we going to define it, or are we not going to define it? Because if you go by the numbers, it should have been Christian that year. But now we're going by the numbers with Kyler Murray. So I don't understand when we make that distinction, or is this just a culture? Is everything shifting towards numbers? Maybe that's what's happening. I don't quite like it, but maybe that's exactly what's happening. I'm not 100% sure. So
yeah, it's confusing because, like you said, I mean, they need to put a definite definition on it, because Christian McCaffrey's numbers that year were stupid.
Yeah, and they talk about, the Heisman is supposed to be defined as this award for great on and off the field excellence, but plenty of guys with some off the field issues win the Heisman. Hello, Cam. Hello, Jameis. I mean,
Reggie Bush.
Even some people made that excuse for Baker Mayfield last year, with even though those weren't issues, but some concerns from the stale square public.
Yeah, I mean, Baker Mayfield grabbed his dick to Kansas and still won the Heisman.
Like, what are we doing here? I mean, the Heisman, that's what every time they read it, and it was some British guy who couldn't talk today. Every time they read it, they go through these values, and the Heisman Trust selects the most exemplary athlete on and off the field, blah, blah, blah. No, it's not. It's the best football player, period. So define what it's supposed to be and move on. Don't give me the bull crap about best on and off the field. It's not that. It's the best football player, or is it the guy who puts up the most video game-like numbers? Define what it is so we all can agree on it and move on.
Yeah, exactly. My opinion, exactly. So we'll move on from the Heisman talk, just because.
And this is not a slight at Kyler Murray. That man is a monster. First round pick in
baseball.
Heisman, 5-star, millionaire, 4.4 speed, can do whatever he wants athletically. Absolute salute to that man. This has nothing to do with him. He did all he could, and any year he deserves his Heisman. But this year, in that conference, I just don't think it's the case. And it's why you saw such an uproar. We don't usually see this. You saw a public uproar from Alabama's coaches, players, the fans you expect, but you don't expect those other guys to be so vocal about it, and they were. So I'm very curious to see what December 29th looks like, because, of course, Bama gets to play Kyler Murray. And what did we say last week, Kev? The guy who wins the Heisman usually doesn't have a great bowl game.
Do good. I mean, what? Derrick Henry's only what Mark Ingram and
Jameis
Derrick
Winston.
Henry, Jameis.
That's really it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Baker Mayfield lost last year.
Manziel
Lamar
didn't
Jackson
win
didn't
anything.
play in the
Lamar
playoffs.
Jackson didn't win. I
Yeah.
mean, now you're stretching to go back.
Even that year, I mean, Deshaun Watson was the best player, but Lamar Jackson was the most numbers-friendly player. I mean, that's another one where
Yeah, and then if you're going to go off numbers,
what is it?
And then so you go off numbers for the Lamar Jackson year. Lamar Jackson had a better year the next year
And didn't win it.
and didn't win the Heisman. So anyway,
What are you looking for there, Heisman folks?
we'll jump off this soapbox before
See how that guy pronounced Tungo Vailoa? He said Tungo Vailoa.
Yeah, and then Tua just said just Tua.
Just go to it, bro.
So yeah, I mean maybe they'll figure it out one day. And we'll see what happens. Maybe they'll define it or something and make it better. Who knows? So
not to mention, if you can pick up a pen, you get a Heisman vote. That's a whole other issue. Not a lot of football guys voting on the Heisman. For those who are curious as to who makes those decisions, not a lot of football men or women making those decisions.
I mean,
I know multiple people who have Heisman votes who couldn't tell you what cover 2 looked like. So, yeah, that's a whole different thing, but that's part of the problem as well.
I think former Heisman winners' votes should count more than the AP's votes.
Yeah, and they give out so many votes too, so it's just like
it's pretty stupid. So.
And why do we vote now? With all this technology, can we not just vote after the playoff?
Yeah.
I mean, or even after the semifinal. I mean, just say, hey, get on your phone, send us an email by midnight or by noon the next day after the playoff, and let's just do the Heisman January 10th every year. Why not?
Why not?
Why do we have to do it December 8th? I don't understand either, because I get it back in the day because the entire season except for one game was done. But now we have a playoff structure in place, and guess what? The guys who finished 1 and 2 are playing each other in 21 days, 3 weeks from tonight. Bama, OU in Miami. Let's not have that game and let that be a big factor instead of a guy who got banged up and another who played really well. Let's let bygones be bygones against one another. Imagine that. Imagine if you knew going into that game, this would determine who goes to the Natty and who wins the Heisman. How great would that be? Just saying.
I think you'd see a little more trying to do too much with the ball. Tua already has it's no knock against him. Tua already has an issue with trying to do too much with the ball in big games. And it gets himself into issues, but it also makes for great football, and he makes great plays coming out of it. But he does have a tendency to get himself into situations trying to do too much with the ball. So I think doing it before is better for Alabama, in my opinion, just because if they know this game depends on it, he might try to do too much with the ball. So
yeah, Tua, real quick before we move on, Tua did I don't want to say address the public, but he tweeted out something. He tweeted out congratulations and a thank you. Quote, humbled and grateful for the tremendous amount of support from my family, the University of Alabama, and our fans throughout this process. Prayer emoji hands. Big congrats to Kyler on winning the Heisman and Dwayne on a tremendous season this year. Now we're back to work. # roll tide. So everybody's ready for October 29th, including Tua. Scooterless Tua today, by the way.
Scooterless and bootless.
Scooterless. We didn't get to see him walk much, and it looked like Jalen Hurts that first game after his surgery, but he was scooterless for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I just want to do it real quick. There was a football game played today.
There was.
If you didn't know, there was a football game today. The 119th Army-Navy game was played today. And it was, it was a great game as usual between the two service academies. And I just, this game always is, it resonates throughout the country as, people all over the world are watching because we have service members all over the world, and it's good to see. They I like that they had a camera on the Big Red One, the current Big Red One stationed.
That was really cool.
I forget where they were stationed, but I thought it was pretty cool that they had that. And just I know for myself, it's a fun game to watch. Having ties to both service academies through family, being that my sister was a naval pilot, and then my significant other was in the Army, and both my grandfathers were Marines and stuff like that. So Army Navy means a lot to me, and I know John, you have ties to the military as well, and
Oh, Army be Navy.
absolutely. So I mean, I hate to go against my sister and everything, but I go with the significant other because if Army wins, she's happy. If she's happy, I'm happy. So go Army, be Navy. Um,
3 in a row, man.
Three in a row is another good one.
Man, just the hitting in that game is
It's different.
that's
It's
ball,
different.
man. That's ball. That's like Alabama LSU. Effort, intensity on every snap. Yes, the talent level is different. Yes, you're not going to see these dudes on Sundays. Although that safety from Navy, Williams,
Williams
sign,
could play on Sunday.
sign that man up.
Give
But
me that line. Give me my man at linebackers for Navy too. My man with the cowboy collar. Give me
sign
him.
him up, man. It's just a different level of passion and physicality. It's what ball should be, and man, just the hitting was just beautiful, and you knew it was cold in Philly too, and you knew it hurt every time, but it never slowed the effort, the pageantry, the flyovers, double flyovers. I mean, that alone is chill
Yeah.
worthy.
Army has the
Navy's
Blackhawks fly over, and then Navy has the fighter jets fly over. So
just awesome. Just
it
if you
was just a really
you're
cool.
not American if you don't like that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and it comes around every year, and every year when the Army Navy game comes around, it's like, I wish that I would have taken those chances, and sometimes I wish that because you can't help but like, God, I wish I could have been a part of something like that. Like, it just doesn't. You can't help but just like get swept up in the Army Navy fever, in my opinion. Um, and I guess it's just because I love football, and my whole a lot of my family has served in the military and was pushing me to serve in the military, but I wasn't ready for it at that point in my life. So
And mine was the opposite. Mom said,
Mom said no. I can see that. I can see your I can see your mom right now saying no, absolutely not. I can see it.
Yeah, I wanted to be a fighter pilot my whole life.
I can see it.
I couldn't play in the NFL, which obviously didn't happen.
Yeah.
I wanted a fighter pilot. My dad's military. I was born in Fort Bragg. Shout out 82nd Airborne.
Hey, North Cac, son.
Moved to Hawaii. Stepfather, uncles, just everybody was Army in my family. That's what we did after our grandparents and parents came and sacrificed to get to this country. We wanted to defend it. We love this country, and I wanted to follow. I wanted to do the same thing, but I love football too much, and my mom loves me too much, I guess.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Of course, they had all the tearjerker previews and.
Oh man, it's like Tom Rinaldi on 10.
Yo, any Tom Rinaldi.
Thank God ESPN doesn't have that game.
Because if any Tom Rinaldi piece already makes you cry, but then you throw in the Army Navy part to it, and that's cheating.
Yeah. All right, man. So should we jump into some of these questions? I know we're way behind. There's a lot going on.
We're way behind, and I will.
I'm gonna let you DJ that one.
I'll start scrolling, and we will get to these questions. Obviously, I'm gonna just go off of this one because I know I've seen it probably 10 times. Can we get a prediction for Clay Webb on Monday? I know he's that kind of kid, and no one really knows. But if you had to just go off of gut, where are you going?
The most recent buzz I still hear is Georgia. That's where I hear it the most consistently. The school that has the buzz. But I will tell you that my best Athens folks don't know. So this thing is still up in the air as much as any 5-star, 36 hours away from committing. So I'm going to get there early, and I'm going to ask around, and I'm not going to get anything. But I will be as excited as these fan bases on Monday because, one, I know this kid hates all of this and he wants to get it over with. One of my sources in the SEC said, I just want to see the kid talk in front of a crowd. So there's going to be natural anticipation, but I'm going to be as surprised as the next person because I don't have a gut. I don't have a crystal ball pick. I'm not going to make a crystal ball pick. Georgia's been the most consistent I've heard lately. I've heard a lot of Alabama lately as well. I would say it's between those two. Clemson and Auburn have seemed to kind of fade off a little bit with Clay. Georgia Tech job didn't go to a candidate that could have swung momentum their way for Clay. So I think they're probably out of it, although it's Clay Webb, so you never know. But I think it's a Georgia-Bama battle. And right now I'd probably lean a little bit towards UGA, but it is not all said and done. And that gut is not a confident gut. It is it's a by default one right now.
All right. Yeah, I'm not even gonna make a prediction because
Like I'm saying, like I'm trying to do my job, but it's like I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie about it.
yeah,
So
yeah. No, I know. Do you think that Bama's done a DB, or will they still try to push for one of these
no,
other
there's too many good names on the board to
guys? Yeah.
go away. You got Jordan Battle, I think, is the guy you still try to focus in on. I think he's the one guy who can do the most things left on the board. I think you got your classic safety in Daxton Hill. I think you got your pure corner with Jeff Carter. You got some guys who are in between, but I think the guy who's best in between is Jordan Battle, and I think he's the biggest difference maker remaining of those defensive back targets for what Bama's looking for. Now, if they want more of a corner, maybe Akeem Dent is that guy, but I'm not sure. Nobody's sure just how firm that Florida State commitment is. So we know Bama can do it. They flipped 2 DBs tonight, but the thought of flipping one where there's so many contenders is a little bit more daunting than flipping one who is really just down to 2 schools, Ohio State and Alabama. And we all know that Urban Meyer was the main plug there for the Buckeyes. So with him out of there, Jordan Battle just kind of makes sense. But either way, I don't think Bama's done in the secondary. Nope. What are you laughing at?
Yeah. So our man Christian Sykes, who's a writer for the website, asked, "Who's a better recruiter, Tosh Lupoy or Pierce Quick?"
Depends on who you ask. If you're asking anybody from the West Coast, I'd probably go Tosh. But man, Pierce Quick's gonna get. We should create a profile for him on 24/7 for a recruiter profile. I mean,
Yeah, for real.
he's as vocal and out there as anybody else, and that's who he is. He loves this stuff. I mean, Pierce. You're a Bama fan if you're watching this, most likely, unless you're just a really, really hate Alabama so much that you want to watch us talk about it. Um, he reads and follows as much content as you do, and I'm looking in the camera for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
He follows it and knows it that much. He knows about official visitors coming in. He knows about the crystal ball picks being made. He knows about who's playing in what game. He knows about who's leaning where, the timelines, when kids are committing. I don't know if this is going to happen. I have not even hit up Pierce. I'm actually going to hit him up Sunday because I'm in Birmingham. I wouldn't be surprised if he skipped school on Monday to go to Clay Webb's announcement. Now, I don't think he's going to do that. But if there's any guy who would be the type to do it, it would be Pierce Quick. That's how involved and how much he follows this stuff. He loves it. He lives for it, and
That's
it's
his
why.
boy too.
And that's his boy. I mean, that's why a lot of people just like him, first of all, and that's why a lot of people think that he's gonna be in football the rest of his life, regardless of how good of a player he'll be. And he's a really good player, by the way. But Pierce is a darn good recruiter, and it's because he's likable and because he's so aware. Pierce Quick can tell you more about the national recruiting landscape in terms of what everybody's got than Tosh Lupoy. I'm confident in that. Now, Tosh will get into the details that a kid simply couldn't grasp at this point. It's why he's one of the best recruiters in America. But if it's a small group of people, give me Tosh Lupoy. But if it's getting out to the masses, I'd take Pierce Quick.
Yeah, definitely. Pierce is doing his thing. I see it all over social media. He's the first one to congratulate kids on.
That's where I first saw the Daxton Hill
Yeah,
commitment.
he's the
Because
first one
I
to.
don't follow Dax, I follow Pierce, and Pierce was like, "Oh, we're rolling, here we go." I was like, "Oh, guess things are turning up a little bit."
Yeah, so Pierce is the first one to congratulate new commits. He's the first one to say, "Hey, come join us." Blah blah blah. He talks to all of them. They have a group text. I would love to see that group text
Oh, I'm gonna see it.
with them. So
I'll
they're
see it.
all
I'll see it before signing day.
yeah.
Certified.
Let's see. Move Helms to receiver. We talked about that. Yeah, I think it's a possibility.
He's a big
Um,
kid too. Big kid, good ball skills. I mean, you can these, and this is typical of Alabama. A lot of these DBs play wide receiver and do it well. Christian Williams is a good receiver. Brandon Turnage is an excellent wide receiver. Turnage may be a better receiver than Dax. Turnage is great on offense and plays better competition, obviously, in Mississippi. And Helms is a good receiver as well, a big kid too. So there's 6'1", 203 is not slight for DeMarco. So the wide receiver possibility should be out there for these guys. And if for some reason you take a little bit more or many more DBs than you expected, don't rule it out. We've seen movement we just mentioned Trevon Diggs, Cyrus Jones has played both ways as well. Bama's done this in the past, so don't be shocked if they do it again.
yeah, for sure. I'm hearing some things out of LSU about George Pickens. Anything?
George Pickens showed up at Auburn today, so
Oh,
LSU's probably the top threat now. I think they've moved there because Bama has seemingly cooled. Florida State could get him on campus soon. I think that could be something depending on the close there. But there's a lot of look. There's a lot of questions at Auburn. I just spent the last 3 days in Auburn in the stadium every day. Been around Gus, been around some other guys. There's a worry. They lost Asa Martin today. There is a worry there. Ran into a lot of players who play for Auburn. It's a little different. It's just a little different vibe right now. It's like tiptoeing. The young girl gets home. She's out later than she's supposed to be. She tiptoes home into the room, trying to make sure dad doesn't wake up and find her before he beats her ass. It's kind of like that right now at Auburn. There's a lot of tiptoeing going on. Bad example. A lot of tiptoeing going on, and it's just weird. It's weird. There's an OC vacancy. Bobby Bentley, who a lot of people thought would end up there, has basically said no. They went at Hugh Freeze for a minute. He obviously is the head coach at Liberty. Shout out to the Flames of Buckshot. So it's just
that's
kind
gonna
of
be an
uneasy.
offense.
It's uneasy at Auburn right now, and I think George Pickens is going to be the most tangible recruiting casualty of that. I'm starting to get to the point where I would be surprised if he ends up at Auburn, but don't know how much Bama is pushing. We're talking about the spots already and how few there are out there. So with all these DBs coming in, I just think receiver is going to be a casualty. Receiver, second tight end, I just don't see it happening at this point. I'm not 100% writing it off, but I'd be shocked if Bama adds one of those two positions down the stretch. I think the focus is solely on O-line, getting that second running back, and defensive players.
Yes, it is. Good. Yeah. Do you think Loxley takes any players, recruits, coaches?
That's possible. You never rule that out. There was a lot of Josh Gaddis buzz externally, never got to my desk and never seemed tangible. I don't know if there's some analyst types, off the field types. Maybe Butch Jones is going to be his OC. I just made that up. But we don't know that for sure. Recruiting wise, I think it's a little more likely just because of how many guys Bama has in that area. All of them are saying the right thing, whether it's Darian Dalcourt, Keelan Robinson, DeMarco Helms, etc., Shane Lee. But the odds say otherwise, and especially the offensive guys. If I'm Keelan Robinson, if I'm Darian Dalcourt, I feel they're a little bit more likely to make the switch over to Maryland than the Shane Lees of the world or even the DeMarco Allums of the world, unless he wants to play receiver. It just seems a little bit less likely. But again, they're all saying the right thing. So there's a chance that Loxley doesn't flip any Bama commits or take any Bama assistants. That'd be a little naive to predict. I'm not saying that, but there's a chance that happens. But if it's a recruit, maybe one, and if it's a coach, I don't see it being any of the on-field coaches, maybe some of the off-field guys. They're going to
Yeah,
scroll a little bit more.
I don't see any on-field guys going.
Yeah, Gaddis was kind of the hot rumor. Not a bit of a lazy report, but not happening.
Yeah. Anything new with Dean? Does Bama move and grab the kid from the West Coast, Henry T?
Yeah, Dean's at LSU this weekend, so he's becoming as well traveled as a recruit as we've seen him and Thibodeau, I think. So you can't rule anything out with those guys. Dean's going to commit on the 19th, and that's kind of it. Bama's had the most buzz, 100%, but Bama has not held the only buzz. Ole Miss has, LSU, Auburn, Georgia, all have had reason to think. Florida State, reason to think that they're in it for Nakobe Dean, and as recent history has shown us, he's going to keep taking trips. So I'm not sure if Bama's going to get another one because they've gotten a bunch, but he is no lock to Alabama. Some people will tell you otherwise. I don't see him as a lock to Alabama. I think the flip of Christian Harris a couple of weeks ago, another A&M flip, by the way, Jimbo, how you doing? I think that was insurance. I think that was insurance for potentially missing on Nakobe Dean because he's the linebacker whose skill set is closely resembled to Dean's. I think they're similar with their athleticism. So I think he was the insurance policy should Bama miss on Dean, but still actively recruiting him, still actively recruiting Henry To'o. Could they take both? I guess, but I don't see them going to the same school. I think this is a Pickens Hazelwood scenario where they end up going their separate ways.
Leading into that, why has Bama never jumped on for Hazelwood?
Well, we hear some of the reasons why, but Bama could potentially not be pushing for George Pickens, and these guys are pretty similar. I'm just going to probably leave it there. But on top of all that, we're not expecting a lot of wide receiver pushes in general. I think if there was a push at wide receiver, I think it'd be Javarius Johnson, the in-state wide receiver committed to Auburn. He doesn't have an offer yet. Hazelwood hasn't mentioned Bama in 6 months or more, and we don't know how hard they're pushing for Pickens. So that's pretty strong trifecta of news items and tangible ones that tell you that Bama is really not worried about the wide receiver position at this point. So I kind of read into that a lot, and Hazelwood I think is an afterthought at this point.
Yeah. All right. So can we get a prediction on the last few spots available?
Huh. Well, if we're going chalk, that means that nobody decommits, nobody gray shirts. So that means there's only 3 spots left. Are we playing?
There's 3 spots left. No decommits, no gray shirts, no nothing. You got to go 3 as it is. You'll go, then I'll go.
All right. So basically, you're asking who the top 3 guys that they can get. I think Evan Neal and Trey Sanders are going to be in there almost no matter what. I just said Georgia is what I'm hearing more for Clay, so they get Clay. And then I got to go defense, I guess, with the last spot if I'm going offense for the first 2. Man, I'll say they miss on the edge guys. They're good enough at linebacker and secondary because of the insurance that they picked up with these last couple of flips. So I say it's a D lineman. I say Ishmael Sopsher. There's the wild card. So he's the last one. I would have said Dean if they didn't have Harris committed. So I'll go Sopsher as the third one. But obviously we think there'll be more additions than 3. But for the sake of chalk, those are my 3. Kev, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so I'll go Evan Neal. Oh man. Evan Neal, Trey Sanders, Henry Toto.
Okay.
Just because I think that I still think that they miss. I still think they miss on Dean for somehow, just because I don't know why. I just don't. I don't feel it. Even though there's been good Bama buzz around Dean, I don't know. There's just something about him that doesn't seem like he's going to go to Bama. So, in that perspective, I think miss on Dean and grab Toa Toa out of the West Coast to round it out.
Yeah, speaking of Tosh, right?
Yeah, that's cheating. That shouldn't even be fair.
Speaking of coaches, Luke Ferguson tweeted us, Kev, and says, "We can't afford to lose Butch Jones."
Hey, Butchie, man.
Butch got that SEC title ring coming his way, regardless of what happens on the 20th.
Either way, Butch Jones is getting some rings this year. So go for Butch. He'll
That'd
be
be his first ring since like Central Michigan.
He'll be back somewhere soon. I just saw an analyst from Michigan get a head coaching job, so he'll be back somewhere soon. Yeah. So I think, I mean, obviously, a bunch of people are talking about, the chance of Thibodeau in Oregon. I still think Oregon leads for Thibodeau.
Yeah, he's at Florida this weekend, his last visit, committing
Yeah.
a week from today. But Nick was there the other day, so you never know. You never know. And you would expect Lupoy to end up there too for an in-home. But yeah, I'm with you there. I don't see Thibodeau at this point.
There's just something about it.
They've got edge guys. They've got
Yeah.
edge guys in this class. When you talk about Kevin Harris,
And God, Kevin Harris's raw ability, like
it's great. It's great. King Makuta is a pass rusher.
You get him with Coach Cool, and you teach that kid some moves. Like that kid's gonna be he'll just look for that name in a couple years because that kid's
it's gonna take some time.
He's a project. He's definitely a project. He's still super raw. He's kind of like that Iabi Anoma. He's real raw, but Kevin Harris, I like Kevin Harris a lot, and I think he's gonna be really good. So.
Yeah, so I don't know. And Nolan Smith, obviously, he's at Georgia to wrap up his visits. And I think that was by design.
Yeah.
How about Georgia and Bama getting all 3 IMG 5-stars on campus together for official visits? I mean, that's about as ridiculous.
Pretty impressive.
With Urban Meyer gone, are those the 2 best head coach recruiters in the country right now?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think so.
I feel like I'm missing one on that recruiting guy, but I mean, I feel like, yeah. I mean, James Franklin does a good job for what he's got at Penn State. But he got Nolan on campus, so
You'll see.
Yeah. So and all right, so I've seen this, and I know a lot of people have asked and are talking about it, and someone just said something about it in the chat, so I'll ask: is a boy B just trolling by going on all these visits, or is he seriously considering other schools?
Say that again. I lost you for a second, boss.
Sorry. Is a boy B trolling, or is he actually considering these schools he's going to?
No, I mean, in the spring, Justin said he's at Miami this weekend. For those who don't know,
Yeah,
Miami's not a threat to him. Look, Jess Simpson is the D-line coach at the U. He's from an Atlanta guy, and he had a relationship with a lot of guys. And if Boygby was a guy who wanted to take his recruitment the distance, committed early to Bama, because he just fell in love, and he's basically following through with all those visits that he's told people he was going to take. So he's been to Florida, he's been to Miami. I'm not sure where else, Tennessee, but I don't think he's going to follow through and commit to any of those schools. I think he's pretty solid to Bama. I think he's doing the conventional thing for this era, which is I'm going to commit and then I'm going to see if anything matches it. And for him at this point, nothing has matched it. He's a no nonsense cat. I know his coach very well. He's not trolling. He is not trolling. There's a tight end who's trolling in the recruiting right now. There may be an edge guy or 2 trolling for all we know at this point. This kid ain't trolling. He's taking his visits, doing his due diligence, never been down to Miami. He's only been to Florida once. He wanted to just check out these places and see if anything stacked up. And if something stacked up, he'd flip. He hadn't flipped yet. So if Mark Richt does it, I would be shocked. If there's one thing we've learned in the last couple of years is that Mark Richt's evaluations, recruiting strategy, organizational skills, program development is not quite what it used to be. Well, not quite what you said, but it's not quite what it used to be. I was trying to be nice, man. Pastor Richt, man, come on.
That's cool.
You're like a spade's a spade, bro.
You can be nice. I'll be that guy.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, all right. So I think let me look and see if we can find one more good one, and then we'll wrap up for tonight since we're passing midnight Eastern time. I know you're still an hour behind, but I'm passing midnight, so
you're getting old, bro.
I know, bro. Tell me
Right.
about it. Yeah, I think no. I think that'll wrap it up as far as live chat. Bowles in. All right, here we go. Bowles in or out? I think he's out. There we go.
I'll say
that one just came in. Bowles in or out? I think he's out. He'll probably
Bowles a good player too, man.
And it's that that's just the nature of where we're at right now. I
think he'll be a gray shirt candidate.
Yeah. So
I think it's not a secret at this point, right?
Yeah. Miami may not get right recruiting wise until they can get Cristobal back there.
Yeah, I think somebody asked me recently. It might have been on here. No, it wasn't. Somebody asked me recently what it would take to get him away from Oregon, and I said 2 jobs: Alabama and Miami. Yeah. So and I don't think it's a guarantee, but Miami's just a hard gig, man. People don't realize how hard it is. Private school, higher academic standards, and the buzz that you had, the grasp you had on America. These kids were not born, and that makes us old as hell. But it's true. These kids were not.
Yeah.
These kids didn't watch Sean Taylor. They didn't watch Clinton Portis, Andre Johnson. They definitely didn't watch Ray Lewis. Some of their parents might not have watched Ray Lewis.
Yeah.
These kids are young. These kids are young. They don't remember that. They don't remember Ed Reed. They don't. So
it's dog.
Yeah.
That's my favorite. That's one of my favorite little, and it's just 10, 15 seconds, but
that's my favorite safety ever.
Makes me want to run through a wall. All right. So we'll wrap that up tonight. I mean, guys, thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining in. We set a personal record tonight. Thank you guys for that. We had almost 120 people in here at one point, and that's definitely a new record for us. It's humbling. We appreciate it. Definitely. We can't thank you guys enough. And thank you we're just 2 guys shooting the shit, and you guys come out and interact with us, and we appreciate it. So as always, I'm going to plug my website. I'm going to plug the website, crimsonandbluechips.com. Go sign up for an account, and that way we can start our email list, and you can interact on site posts, and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Hit the bell notification button so you get notifications on when we go live, when we post videos, and all that good stuff. Socials at CABC Pod on Twitter and Instagram, and Crimson and Blue Chips on Facebook. And we appreciate you guys. Thanks for stopping by. And John, let them go.
Nah, bro, I'm not following that.
All right, then. Well, for John Garcia Jr., I'm producer Kev, and thank you guys for stopping by. Have a great night.